A few days ago, around 500 sites that were on Journey by Mediavine were just deactivated from the ad platform. Mediavine didn't give any of those creators notice that they had done this to them, with the exception of what you see on the screen here. This little notice that appeared on the top of their dashboards, that was the only way that people knew that their ads were turned off. And since then, there's been zero communication from Mediavine to these creators. So let's see what's happened so far and what you can do to prevent this from happening to you. So I've actually been talking about this for the past few days in my email newsletter for Skip Blast, thanks to a reader who tipped me off that she noticed that her site had been removed from Mediavine Journey. So basically, thanks to her, I was able to do some digging to kind of figure out what's going on, how many people were affected, and what are they targeting, right? Because that's what's most important for, people, if you have your own website, to know, like, how can I avoid this happening to me? Now, the problem here with Mediavine is, they're not communicating with everyone. They've just essentially ghosted all of these people. They're not really making it clear, in terms of, what are they targeting, right? What was going on with these sites that led to them being deactivated? What's their crime, right? What did they do? They didn't get a chance to fix it. So basically, for the rest of us out there, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen to us? So here's what we know so far. Like I said, it was around 500 sites, supposedly, that have been hit. Mediavine has not given any concrete numbers. This 500 site number came from some random person on Twitter who said that they saw it in a Facebook group. They didn't name the group. I'm not seeing it in any of the groups that I'm in, so I can't confirm that number is correct. What I can tell you is that the URLs that have been shared with me of people who were booted off of Mediavine Journey, those websites are still listed as of today in the JSON file for all the sites that are on Mediavine Journey. So I'm actually keeping an eye on that so that once all of those sites are actually removed from the JSON file, hopefully I'll be able to get a more accurate count of exactly how many sites were affected. But as of right now, all we know is that supposedly it was around 500 sites. It seems to have happened on Friday night, the March 14th. And the reason why that's the timeline that we think that it happened is because Mediavine went through and updated all of their support pages, related to things like site terminations, best practices, their requirements, things like that. And so looking at when those, that timeline for that happens, that's kind of what we're thinking, that it happened was on Friday, probably in the late afternoon or nighttime. But again, no one knows for sure because Mediavine didn't actually reach out to tell anyone they'd done this. They actually updated in their policies that they didn't have to let you know if they've removed you from the program, which was, great timing, right? I've also seen a lot of people who claim to have recipe sites that were removed. That's not surprising, quite honestly. Both because, people have been making a lot of AI, websites with the AI recipe content, as well as that group of food bloggers on Facebook that I've actually been talking about for quite a while now, who have been targeting these AI sites, or sites that they think are AI, right? Let's see here. I've been talking about them since it looks like maybe November 16th was the first time I talked about them. The group is on Facebook, like I said, it's a private group. I've since been kicked out of the group when they saw me talking about them, being the internet hall monitors on Twitter. But basically, any site that they suspect of committing the quote-unquote crime of being an AI site, particularly recipe sites, they have been mass reporting them like at the same time to both Pinterest as well as Mediavine, to try to get those sites removed from both of those sites. For some reason, they think that these other sites existing are hurting them financially. I tried to have conversations with them in the group about why they believe that what other people are doing is hurting them. That went about as well as you can expect. And like I said, I've since been kicked out of that group. But if you want to see, what I'd seen, when I was in the group, you can just go to actually the Skip Blast newsletter website here, the archive website, and just search for food bloggers, and you'll find, my updates and screenshots from that group. Some other people I've seen on Twitter recently are actually still in the group and were reporting that they actually are kind of claiming responsibility for this. Who knows if that's actually true, but I wouldn't be surprised because they do seem to have been, like I said, the last time I was in there, really mobilizing and making a big group effort of trying to get sites kicked out of the program. So that's why I think we've seen so many recipe sites get hit with this. We've also got the recent tool Content Goblin that was focused on, basically one-clicking AI recipe content for your website. That's probably another reason why that was targeted. We also saw some sites that weren't recipe sites at all, but had a lot of listicle content, which was a really surprising, crime for these sites to have committed. And we'll look in just a minute and I'll show you where Mediavine did update some of the journey documentation, showing they no longer want sites that have, listicle style format. I've also seen some reports of people saying their only crime was having AI images, which is interesting to me simply because a lot of stock photo sites now are accepting AI images. And if you're not savvy enough to know if something is an AI image or not, then you could accidentally get caught up in this, even if you're, trying to do the right thing and you're trying to use stock photos. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward as you are creating sites with the intention of monetizing with display ads on Mediavine or any of the other platforms who are really targeting people who are using AI. And in regards to AI images, the best practice to kind of help prevent yourself from being an easy target is to never upload the AI image to your site directly from Midjourney or wherever it is that you're getting it, because it'll be easier for them to know that it is indeed AI, right? So instead, pull that into Canva or Photoshop or something else, resave it, export it as a whole new file. That way it doesn't have, basically, hey, this is an AI image. It makes it easier for them, to basically find you out, I guess we'll say. So just protect yourself that way. Something easy that you can do. It just takes a little bit longer, but honestly, it's not that much time. Okay. So I do want to show you one of the pages that was recently updated in conjunction with all of those sites getting deactivated. It's the best practices page here on the Journey by Mediavine support pages. You can see here as I'm recording this that it was updated 5 days ago. I'll just look at my calendar here. So you can see that kind of coincides with the timeline that we think when all of this happened, which would be on Friday. So just basically letting you know when I'm recording this video, when this was, in case you're watching this at a later date. A few things of note here. Not all of them are relevant to this mass deactivation. For me, one of the most interesting things here was seeing that they've now officially lowered the requirements to get into Mediavine Journey to 1,000 sessions per month. I'm not really surprised to see that, since there have been rumors of sites getting in with that lower number than the 10,000 they started with. But also, if they've actually kicked off 500 sites, then that's 500 sites that they're not making money off of. So, of course, they're going to need to kind of make up that income loss by lowering, their minimum traffic requirements. So, again, it's nice to see that that is an official number now, but it's also not surprising. Okay, let's just scroll down here. So it does say that they will accept, traffic coming just from Pinterest or just from Facebook. That was something I was wondering when this first started happening, which was, I wonder if they're targeting sites who are basically spamming Pinterest. That doesn't really seem to be the case. Although I do find it interesting, this little tip here to think about ways to diversify your traffic as you grow. So we may see traffic sources become an issue with Mediavine in the future. This part about original content, of course, that should be self-explanatory, but I suspect that Mediavine is using this to kind of say, if you're using AI content, we don't consider it original content. Again, they're not specifically saying that. I'm just assuming on their past actions that that's kind of what this means. It says, don't do content that's duplicated or crowdsourced from other websites or resources. It also mentions not doing a site that's all roundup posts or aggregated content, which is going to be, content that you create that links out to other websites. That would be like maybe a news site. Maybe if you're doing a Facebook page where you're doing those little short articles to drive traffic to your site from Facebook, and then you link out to the news source, they're clearly going to be, basically putting the kibosh on that as well. Something that I personally kind of find a bit humorous here is the post often but not too often, because it will basically be an indication of overuse of AI. Okay, well, just tell me how often I can post, right? Maybe I have a day job and I only have time to post content on the weekend. So maybe on the weekends I'm bulk uploading my content all at once because that's all the time I have. Now Mediavine's telling me I'm going to get penalized for that. So it would be really great if they could be a bit more transparent here and just say, if we see you doing X amount of posts in a day or X amount of posts in a month, then we're going to look at you harder and thinking you're AI. But, whatever. I guess they're going to do them, right? Let's see here. What else? Got the brand safe content, of course. That's nothing new. But again, like the things that really stand out to me the most in this particular update is the no roundup posts. Those are going to be your listicle formats, right? As well as don't post too often. But I mean, who knows what too often actually is. They also updated their site terminations page. Nothing really new here that really stands out to me. They link out to the same page I was just on. One thing that I do find interesting is that you can reapply to Journey after 60 days, but they are expecting you to make changes. Of course, the real problem here is make changes to what? If they're not telling you what the problem is, then how do you know what to make changes to? So I don't know what to tell you there. Just know that you can reapply. Somewhere else I was clicking through on the site, and I don't remember which page it was on. They do have some new updated things that say if you pass their initial vetting and then you later start doing, practices that aren't part of their best practices, then they will come after you and deactivate your site. So don't think you're safe if you get in with like a super clean site or, clean by whatever standards they have right now, and then start doing things that are against their terms, because that can come back to bite you. Let's see here. It says that basically if they terminate one site, it doesn't affect all of your sites. I have seen people who've lost all of the sites in their account, but I've also seen people who have only lost some of their sites in their accounts. So don't really worry about that. Although if you're just getting started, I would definitely advise you to have one Journey account per website. It's just a best practice. Anyone who's been in this industry for, any period of time basically knows that you don't want everything in the same account. Because you don't want anything to be basically fruit of the poisonous, tree, right? So definitely try to get yourself some different accounts set up if you don't already have that. It does say, I don't know if this was here before, that they reserve the right to withhold your payments if they think it is invalid traffic. Now, what I find interesting about that is I have talked to some people in this recent purging who were told it was invalid traffic, when they were only getting 20 to 30 page views a day. So they clearly were not sending, bot traffic to their sites. But clearly Mediavine may be trying to withhold payment for some of these people who have been terminated. Okay, now their publisher policies page was actually updated more recently. I think this has actually been updated since I first looked at it. So unfortunately, I don't know what has changed in it since those times. But if I am not mistaken, this is the page where I found them specifically calling out sites with listicles. Of course, they don't want any sites that engage in copyright infringement, although when I did have a site on Mediavine a few years ago, and I reached out to them about another site on Mediavine stealing my content, they didn't care. So I find this interesting that they suddenly care now. Let's see here. They define invalid traffic. Like I said, though, for the person I talked to who isn't sending bot traffic, not really sure what Mediavine thinks is going on there. Maybe it's just a ploy to, keep some cash like Amazon used to do back in the day, until my wife and I sued them for doing that, so who knows. Here we go. Templated, made for advertising, or low value content. This is where they specifically call out listicle articles. It says even if extra text is added for each item. So they clearly don't want listicle content. Now, one thing I find really interesting about this is I saw some people on Twitter talking about this and saying, but listicle content is not against the Google terms of service. And, that may be true, right? But why does that matter? That's completely irrelevant. Mediavine is not Google. Google is not Mediavine. So it doesn't really matter if it's against Google, quote unquote, terms or not, because this is Mediavine, right? And they've decided for whatever reason, they do not want listicle content. Now, I am assuming that is because listicle content is so easy to create with AI tools, but so is any other type of content. So yeah, it's really bizarre. It's like, here's one of those. Nothing I did went against Google terms of service. Like, I love that this person is mad and calling out Mediavine and tagging them on Twitter. But again, it doesn't matter if what they're doing is against Google terms of service. Nowhere in this Mediavine documentation does it even say, you can't do things against Google terms of service. It just says, we don't want listicle content, right? We don't want roundup content. We already know that they don't want AI content, even though they're using AI to find AI. So, isn't that interesting? They don't want sites where it's dedicated to linking to other sites with little original content provided. So basically, this is like a huge crackdown by Mediavine. Some people online are saying, is the actual Mediavine, the one where you have to have 50,000 sessions a month, is it going to be next? Who knows, right? They've been periodically kicking people out of there as well. So where is safe, right? Where is safe for creators who want to monetize their sites with display ads? It's funny because I keep seeing people talking about Ezoic because Ezoic, they haven't really been cracking down on anyone for anything like this. But anyone who's used Ezoic knows it's not quite the same experience because you have to do your own ad placement and stuff like that. The ads seem to always load a little slower in my experience. And the RPMs are usually quite a bit lower, at least in my experience, compared to, Mediavine, Raptip, and other platforms. So that's something to keep in mind. So if I was you, I wouldn't count on being able to monetize, with any of these display ad networks, quite honestly, especially Mediavine Journey. But I think you can take some steps to, stack the deck in your favor. So if you're using AI images, then, like I said, save it as a new file so that it's not coming direct from the, the AI image tool. If you are using all AI content, you need to human edit that, introduce some things like typos that humans make so that it looks more human, right? These are things that are, it's going to take you a little bit more time in your workflow, but that could be the difference between you, continuing to earn with display ads and getting booted off, with no warning, just getting completely ghosted. So if I was someone who was trying to either get on Mediavine Journey or keep my sites on there, and not get targeted, those are the things that I would do. Basically, also, I would recommend that you try to make your websites be as least niche site as possible, right? So what I mean by that is, are you using GeneratePress, Astra, or Cadence for your theme? So are most people. Change your theme, right? From what I have seen, the AI tool that Mediavine uses to scan sites to see, if they're AI, one of the things it looks for is, are they using a common theme like that? I know it's completely ridiculous, but that is one of the things that they are looking for. So just basically think, what does my site have in common with niche sites, and then do the opposite. Basically, anything you can do to stack the deck in your favor here is going to help keep you safe, right? And like I said, I've been talking about this on the Skip Blast newsletter for the past few days. The link will be in my description below if you want to go ahead and sign up for that. Because once I, do get the updated JSON file, I am going to tell you guys, how many sites it seemed like were actually affected here. You can also just, pop over, look in the archive, read the recent posts, and then you can see, basically the screenshots I've taken, what I've learned, what I've discovered from people who've been affected by this, things like that. Like I said, I did 3 updates on this in a row. I'm probably not going to be doing any more until I have, those updated numbers for how many sites are affected. And if you were affected by this, then I am truly sorry to hear that. I feel like this was handled very poorly by Mediavine. With the ghosting of everyone and not letting people know, what their crime is, what they did wrong, so that they know how to fix it, right? And if you were one of the lucky ones who did not get affected, then I will keep my fingers crossed for you that you do not get affected in the future. And like I said, if you want to stay updated, on what I know about this, go ahead and check out that link for my email newsletter in the description below, and I'll update you when I know something.